So a while ago, I created a tutorial for Feldspar, and this was posted on my Instagram. It was only a minute long, because I don't like IGTV. And it actually had a different closure from the closure I used today. It ended like this, instead of having the little twirl at the end. And that twirl comes from Tootsie Roll, this little movement right there, fidget move. And Tootsie Roll also had a 1-minute tutorial. However, since so many things have changed, and since I can do better than those tutorials, I've decided I'm going to try and teach Tootsie Roll, Feldspar, Feldspar X, and Feldsparta all in this free YouTube video here. So I'm going to try and give you all the details I can, and I'm going to point out some of the common mistakes I've seen people make with these cuts when they send them to me on Instagram. So without further ado, let's jump into Tootsie Roll. Now before I get into the details of Tootsie Roll, I want to make a few things clear. First of all, it is possible that your hand size might be too small to do this move smoothly. And if that is the case, I apologize. Some of the things might have to be changed to fit your hand size, and you'll probably have a harder time getting it smooth. But I really do think that if you practice anything long enough, you can get it smooth and you can get it to a performance tempo. So let's start off by holding the deck in mechanics grip like so. We want to be pushing back with the index finger. Want to push back the packet so that we can flip it over. And in order to make it easier to flip over, we want to push back and left. Now the way to make that work is as we push back, we're extending these fingers out of the way, and we're going to be pinching with the thumb at the same time. So you can see the thumb kind of pinches it between the flesh here and the tip of the thumb. And the reason why we actually do this is because we want to get this corner between the fourth and little finger. Because as you can see, when this packet revolves, that's kind of a pivot point. And now, the reason why we have to pivot between the fourth and fifth finger instead of, say, the middle and ring, which is one of the common mistakes I see, is because, for one, the fourth and fifth gives more space for the thumb to push, and you also want this packet to end up in exactly the same position as mechanics grip, except with the thumb underneath. You don't want to be up here, you don't want it to be down here, or off to the side, or anywhere like that. You want it to just be in mechanics grip with your thumb underneath. So let's go on. Starting here again, we're going to push back with the thumb, back with the index finger. We're going to pinch with that thumb. And we want to, as we're pushing with this thumb, we want it to catch between the fourth and little finger. And then to push this over, to make it a bit easier, we're just going to push the thumb back slightly. We're not going to try and push it through. We just push it back enough so that it falls over kind of on its own accord. You don't want to have any big hand motions or anything to help assist this. You can certainly do it later on after you get the move down, but I advise that you try and keep your wrist mostly still for this, because you really don't need that much motion to make it happen. So as you see, when I'm pushing back with the thumb, after it gets about here, gravity kind of takes over and it falls over on its own. So after we get it to flip over, this is a part where people also have trouble. You want to use your index finger to flip the packet over like that, but we don't want to just lever it over, because as you see, that brings it out here, and then you kind of have to pull it back. And when you do that in full speed, bringing it out here and then pulling it back, kind of ruins the motion of the move. Because the move itself, it's like the packet's revolving in one spot. You don't want it to be revolving and go off center and then come back. So how do we make it stay in place? Well, that's pretty simple. Instead of levering the packet over with the index finger, we are going to be pushing it back with the index finger. The thumb starts moving backwards, and this is a tricky part. You want to make sure your deck is nice and conditioned. You don't want the cards to be slippery. You're going to be pushing back with the index finger, as you see. Instead of levering it, pushing it back so that this edge slides along my palm. Push the deck back against your thumb, and it should end up here. So hopefully that subtle difference is apparent to you guys, because when you do this instead, it really will make the cut look better, or the twirl look better. So I'm going to go over it briefly again. We want to push back with the index finger and hook it with the thumb as we do so. Then we're going to grab it, or rather have it rest between the little finger and the fourth finger. We're going to push back with the thumb, and we're going to let gravity help us out there. And immediately afterwards, we're going to take the index finger, push the packet along, and have it end up right here. Now we have three main motions in this move. We have pushing it back, we have flipping it over, and then flipping it over again. And in order to make this go nice and smoothly, we want to make sure that all three look like one motion. So as you push back, you can see the thumb, since it pinches the packet here, to help make it easier for it to get between the fourth and little, we're kind of already in position to do the flip. So I recommend that you practice this at a slow enough speed that you can instantly transition from pushing it back to flipping it over. Just practice that over and over. Push it back and flip it over in one motion, and then after that you can practice pushing it back, flipping it over, and then flipping it over again. Slow speed, don't use your wrist to help you out, don't use any weird motions. Because if you can do this with only your fingers, once you add wrist movement later to fit your own style, it will look that much better, that much more effortless. You will build the muscle that you need to perform this nice and smoothly and with control by doing this slow practice. So that's Tootsie Roll. Let's move on to Feldspar. Alright, so Feldspar. Now, the main difference between Feldspar now and the tutorial I made on Instagram is that the closure of it now includes Tootsie Roll, which is why I taught you Tootsie Roll before teaching Feldspar. Now, when we do Feldspar, there are many little details that can help. For that reason, even though it's mechanically a simple cut, I think flow-wise this can be pretty difficult to get a handle on. So don't feel discouraged at all if you have trouble with getting this down. I'm going to include all the details I can so that everything you need is in this tutorial. And if you do need additional help, please feel free to comment below or just to DM me on Instagram, which is probably the best way to reach me. Now we're going to start off by putting the thumb back here. We're kind of in straddle grip right now. We want to raise it slightly up. And as we raise it up, the thumb, which is back here, is going to drag out half the deck. So you don't want to raise it up and then grab it, you just want to raise it up and drag it out like so. Now the packet size here doesn't matter too much, as long as it's between a quarter and half the deck, you should be fine, so don't sweat it. Now the index finger here, I've seen many people have trouble with this because they can't quite reach the index finger between these two packets, and the secret to making that work is when your index finger comes up, it's actually pushing the bottom packets here. You can see my thumb slides along because of the index finger. So when I do this in full speed, you can see that the thumb ends up at this corner when it started at this corner. This is a small detail I didn't cover on Instagram, and I'm going to try and make small things like this as apparent as possible here. So you see we get to this position here, and now this part is also a bit tricky, splitting this packet here. My advice for you is that your hand should not be completely flat, it should not be completely vertical. You want it to be kind of in between. I'd say a little less than 45 degrees probably should work for most people. Now you want to split it with the back of the knuckle here. You just want to get a little packet like so. And this is going to be rotated between the index and fourth finger. So make sure your middle finger is out of the way. Now your fourth finger is going to pull in. Your index finger is going to extend. Middle finger is also going to pull in, because as you see, it's going to bring this short edge flush with this long edge. Also notice that this packet right here, it clears the thumb. It's not caught under it like so, it's just clearing it like so. Now we have this extended like here. We have the index finger extended along this side. The middle finger is on the long edge of the packet on top. And what we want to do is we want to drop this packet down like so. Just simply bring it down. We're holding it in a position similar to Waves by Tobias Levin, or Thumb Cut. Should be nice and relaxed. Now all the action is going to happen over here from now on. As we bring this packet up with our index finger, we're going to pull in with the tip of the index finger. So instead of just lifting the index finger up, the tip is curling around this edge. And the reason it's curling around the edge is because we want to create a little gap between these two packets. That's going to make it easier for the thumb to push this packet along. Now when this packet is pushed on the by the thumb, it's not simply being pushed around in a circle. It's actually two separate motions. The first motion is this corner is being pushed against the palm. So as you bring this up, make sure, by the way, that this packet clears the base packet before you start pushing with the thumb. So you clear the base packet, you push to the right with the thumb. That turns this packet so that the corner is here. The thumb, you're pushing with the tip of the thumb, but now you bend the thumb back. See that? This part, the inner part of the first knuckle, pushes that packet. Then it comes loose from here. You want to really use gravity and momentum as much as possible in this cut, because when it pushes beyond this point, it basically falls by itself. Now the thumb is in this position. The tip of it is up against here. The packet's laying on top. Now to get it to go back around, you don't just lift the thumb up, because you might just do this. You want to push against this corner with the thumb. Now I'm going to be moving the tip of the thumb up like so that I can push the thumb up. Because if I don't move the tip of the thumb up, then just my whole thumb is trying to lift the packet up. You want to lift up just the edge of that packet. And the tip of the thumb is very important in this cut, because remember when we started out here, we push with the tip to get it into the corner. Then we bend the thumb back. And then right here, we're going to be trying to bend the tip up. Bend the tip of the thumb up. And that's going to turn this packet to the left. But since this corner is being held by the base of the thumb, it's going to naturally close like so. And before it falls, before it even gets to this position, you want to start pulling up with the index finger. The index finger, by pulling up, is going to, using gravity and momentum, it's going to pop this corner back. And you'll notice naturally this packet falls down too. And now you're in this position. This is slightly different from Charlier, which is like this. In this position, the packets are a little bit more out to the right. You want to push with the thumb. Push with the thumb, you see the packets are going to slide down the hand. Practice that motion a little bit, sliding the packets down the hand. Now as you slide them down, you want to just push the packet up like so. Continue pushing the packet down, and now you'll see we'll get into the position for Tootsie Roll. Right now the thumb is kind of clipping this packet. The corner of this is kind of between the little and ring finger. It's just a little bit different from before. It's further down in the base of the hand. As opposed to being up here, it's down here. But that's not going to be any issue, because you've practiced Tootsie Roll. And you can get it by pinching this thumb. Since you practice Tootsie Roll, you can pinch the thumb, bring it up a little bit higher, so that you have the clearance to roll it around. And as I said before, for Tootsie Roll, after you do this motion, you want it to end up in mechanic's grip, except with the thumb underneath. And that really is apparent with Feldspar, because when you do Feldspar, when you get to that point where you're pushing with the thumb, then with these fingers, and then when you turn it over again, it's already in mechanic's grip. You don't have to do some resets pulling it back. It's already there. So I'm going to try and run over that again to try and solidify some of the details. Remember, we grip it, the bottom half of the deck, kind of like so. We lift it out. We use the index finger to slide that thumb along the deck. We use the back knuckle of the first knuckle of the index finger, the back of it, to split this packet. I do advise that this packet is the smallest, by the way. Extend the middle. Pull in with the fourth finger. Index finger is kind of staying still. Pull in with the fourth. Pull in with the middle. Let it drop down. Now the reason why we're pulling in with the middle is because we don't want this packet to be caught up against the thumb. By pulling in with the middle, we turn that packet further around clockwise. Now we drop this packet down here, bring it up, hook the index finger around so that you have space. Clear this packet. You don't want it to be below the long edge, you want it to be up above like so. Push with the tip of the thumb and get it into the base of your palm. bend your thumb back so that this knuckle pushes that corner down. Now your thumb is pushed here, and as you may have seen, as this goes halfway through, it falls over on its own accord. Bend the tip of the thumb up again, and start lifting it up. And about right here, you're going to lift up with the index finger, and then you're going to push with the thumb slightly before you close with the fingers. You don't want to close and then start pushing. That doesn't look good. You want to push with the thumb, then push with the fingers. Now you're in this position, use the index and thumb to reposition this packet. Get this corner at least higher than right here. You don't want it to be way down here. You want it to be a little bit up here. And then just roll it over like Tootsie Roll. And then you're done with Feldspar. Now, once you've practiced this, you can move on to Feldspar X. Now, one of the main things with Feldspar X is that it is very different from Feldspar. And that's probably very obvious. Just seems too obvious to even say that. But the reason I'm saying that is because the main motion with the thumb, all those details I said about how to push with the thumb, you can throw those out of the window because we're doing something completely different for this cut. Now, you want to get to this part right here, right before you're letting go with the packets and bringing this one up like so. You want to let go with that packet after you grab a small one like this. You want a small packet about the same size as this packet right here. You want to split that, lift these packets up just a little bit, and then drop it. Just has to be an instant. Just split, lift, drop. Split, lift, drop. And you see that prevents this packet from falling back down, because this packet's right here. Now if you recall, I mentioned in Feldspar that you want this corner to be down here, you want to have the thumb, blah blah blah. You don't want to do that in this. You just want to push the thumb. You want to push with the thumb, the packet, you just want to push it to the right. You want it to turn over just on one axis. You don't want it to be turning on the corner or anything weird like that. So in that sense, this is a little bit easier than Feldspar, but of course it gets a little bit difficult later on. So you just want to push it over like that. And as you may have noticed right there, I actually use the base packet to kind of help me push that over. I don't recommend you actually do that when you're doing the cut, because when we push it over with this packet right here, you can see that this packet, the weight of this packet, just slightly will help it turn over. Now, another thing I recommend when you do this is that in Feldspar, you kind of had the packets up here. And the tilt of the hand didn't really matter too much because you kind of just had it in the corner and you were pushing it around. But when you do Feldspar X, I highly recommend that you tilt the hand slightly more to the left than you normally would, so that this packet naturally falls down like so. Now in the old tutorial, I did an old one for Feldspar X, in the old tutorial I mentioned that you want to let this packet slide and then you want to continue the cut. But you don't want to do that. In order to make this smooth, you want to have continuous motion. So what we're going to do is we're going to be doing that whole thing where you make your thumb pointy. You want to move the tip of it up like so. And you want to just very carefully let this long edge slide along the face or the back here. If you aren't careful enough, it will end up going like this and then falling off. So you want to make sure that this short edge clears the short edge here and then slides along. And then this is pretty easy because you let it fall. Now from here, make sure that it doesn't actually fall completely. You want to keep your index finger wrapped around so we have the gap. This part is where it starts getting interesting. We're going to push along with the thumb here, and these packets are going to split. We're pushing this packet so it collapses against this packet, and this packet is going to start turning like so. See that? It's not up against here, it's kind of turning a little bit. And that just kind of happens naturally if you're doing this right. And if you just let it fall forward, just by barely tilting your hand. You don't want to exaggerate any hand tilt in these cuts. You get it here, and then you start lifting up with the index finger. And you want to be careful here. You want to use old cards because your thumb is having to drag along the back of the packet here. You don't want to drag out cards unless you're doing something intentionally with that. Just want to drag the thumb out like so. Then you close just like Feldspar. So I'm going to go over this briefly again. We have this packet, you split, lift, drop. You push directly to the right. You make sure your hand's tilted slightly to the left to let that packet drop down. And instead of tilting your hand forward so this packet is square, you want to just lift very carefully with a pointed thumb so that this short edge clears that short edge and moves along this packet here, and let it drop. Make sure you don't let this space go away. You want to keep that index finger. Then you're going to push to the right. This packet will clear this edge here. This packet will be pushed against that packet. This packet will naturally be split instead of up against here. It will be split away from it. And then you want to push the thumb back so that this corner is free of this and the gravity kind of just pulls it forward. Then you start lifting up the index finger. You carefully drag the thumb out and you close just like Feldspar. So that's the gist of Feldspar X. Again, if you have any trouble, please DM me on Instagram. Now, let's move on to Feldsparta. Alright, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of the names of these cuts while I attempt to perform Feldsparta. You saw the performance in the intro, but I'm going to try it here as I speak. Now, Feldspar, I just named it after the mineral feldspar because I thought that would be pretty cool. And Feldspar X, the X comes from the Mohs hardness scale, where the highest level is 10, hard as diamond. And 10 in Roman numerals is X, because Roman numerals are always cooler than normal numbers. So we have Feldspar X, because Feldspar X, at the time, was the most difficult version of Feldspar. And I decided, what should I do for Feldsparta? I said, okay, we have a Roman thing going on. How about a Greek thing, like, Feldsparta just kind of fell into place. And I also wanted to have, in the first video where I posted Feldsparta, I wanted to say this is Feldsparta. I think I actually still have that post up somewhere. I might still have it up. In that post I say this is Feldsparta in the caption, and I show this 5-packet move. But yeah, Feldsparta, a lot more difficult than Feldspar and Feldspar X. I actually spent about a year working on this cut, because it was just so difficult. I did not know the details myself of how to get it to work at the time, and I just kept giving up on it. But I'm going to give you all the details I can to try and make this easier for you. You can DM me about this if you want, but I highly recommend you at least spend a month or two working on it before you try DMing me, because it's probably just you having to get used to the cut. So now let's start off. We're going to be doing the same thing that we did for Feldspar X. We're having to lift, split, lift, and drop. This packet should be a little thicker than usual because we're going to use the thumb to split that packet in two. As you can see, there's 2 packets now. You don't want to have single cards because that's going to mess up the kind of weight balance of this construction. So you want to push that packet to the right, like so. And you're doing the exact same thing as Feldspar X, where it just drops down like so. But the hard part here, there's no way to really explain this, there's no way to give you tips on this. You want to turn this over so that the packet is trapped against the thumb, like so, between the thumb and index finger. And you want it to be such that there is a gap between the face-up packet and this packet. And if you drew a line between the 2 corners of this shape, this heart shape, from here to here, you want that to line up with the long edge of this packet. So as you see, the line of that kind of lines up through there. And in order to make it turn over like that, that's a bit difficult. You want to, well, for one thing, you want to practice a lot. But I highly recommend that for this part, you really try to make your thumb as pointed as possible, and you want to flip it fast. It's fine if it splits. It's actually even better if it splits, because you don't want to have it fully like this. You want to have it slightly splayed. So as you saw right there, as I lifted this bottom corner, the packet, since it was up like this and affected by gravity, it began splitting, and then I trapped it with a thumb. That's really the best way I can explain this. I'm sorry about that. But this whole time you also want to keep a gap with the index finger, as is standard with the other Feldspar versions. Now you're going to lift this whole construction up, trap this packet against here, clear this packet against the base packet, as you see, just like normal Feldspar. And then you want to let go with the thumb and immediately push it right here, and you'll notice that this corner is right here, kind of between the corners of the packet below it. It's in the palm, so if you push here with the thumb, you will split the packets. You want to have this kind of flower-like arrangement. And right here, I kind of tilt the hand to the left, because what we're doing is the thumb, after it pushes that packet around, it's going to close. So you want to close that packet as this other packet falls in there. This part is just difficult, just plain knack. You want to get your thumb out of there without dragging cards. And the way I do that is, I'm kind of here. I let gravity pull it down so it's lying on top of my thumb. And then I point my thumb up like so, so that only that small bit of skin and the back of this knuckle is contacting the back of that packet. Because if you just have the whole thumb here and slide it back, you're going to slide cards out. But if you point that thumb, you might have a bit of an easier time. Now you bring this back, and you just close like normal. Let me try and go over that again. Let's try and make this as clear as possible. So we do Feldspar X up to here, and we split this packet. No special way to do it, you just have to feel carefully and split it. And Feldsparta, it's really just no secrets to it. It's really exactly like Feldspar and Feldspar X. It's what you see. You have to learn this knack. So you get your thumb pointed, you lift up the back corner, and you try to trap this packet. Now something that does help me is, instead of trying to trap the packet against here like so, just moving the thumb, I like to pull the index finger up so that as this packet is twisting, these packets are going up. Just move away your thumb and practice moving up the index finger. Instead of just moving it up, move it up and back so that this is kind of clearing here. So you see that can kind of rest. So we move it up and back as we do that thing. This is naturally going to splay a little bit. We trap it here. If you imagine drawing a line from the corners up here to here, we have a straight line that should align with the long edge here. Trap that. You get it over here. We want this corner to be between these two corners down here against the base of the palm. We want to push on this corner here so that it levers that up, this flower-like arrangement. And before this corner clears that corner right there, before it goes beyond it, you want to tilt your hand so that the other one falls in between them. Then you just want that packet to fall down. Point the thumb so that you can bring it back like so. That's really as in detail I can get with Feldsparta, but if you practice it enough, I really do think that anyone can learn this. So please DM me if you have any trouble. I'm actually going to have a bonus move right after this. I'm going to explain Feld Split, which is one of my recent Instagram posts. It's a way to have a deck split from the normal Feldspar. So look forward to that in the next section. So after going through Feldsparta, this should be a nice little treat for those who stuck all the way through. You only have to be able to do Feldspar to do this, which is nice. Feld Split is a simple idea. You're just doing Feldspar, and halfway through you can split a packet off. This is very useful in combos. I actually have a video on my Instagram from rather recent with these cards where I perform Feldspar, or Feld Split. So to do this, we actually do Feldspar all the way through to here. And if you remember, at the beginning of the tutorial, I said that once we get here, we want to pull up with the index finger and close. Instead, we want to get this packet to be all the way back here. So when you lift this packet up. You're going to let it go all the way back until these edges are lined with each other. And in order to split this packet, you want to get this corner just underneath the edge of the base packet, so that when you push back with the index finger, it pushes a packet back. Now it is possible, if you have an old enough deck, to not bother with getting this corner underneath that packet. If you have an old enough deck that's sticky, you can actually use friction and speed just to slide a single card along, like so. Although I really don't recommend that. And for me, it's a little bit too imprecise. And I like to use any deck. I like to have moves where virtually any deck can be used to perform it. So again, for Feld Split, we do Feldsparta, or Feldspar all the way to here. We get to this part, and we want to bring the packet all the way back. Then we get this corner underneath the edge of this base packet, and then we push a packet back. And then we can do whatever we want from there. We can have, I don't know, tailor-made or something. But we do that, and then we do our combo and finish. But this should hopefully be a nice little treat for you guys. I know that Feldsparta was a very difficult thing to sit through. I think that was the longest section of this tutorial. So hopefully this is a nice little cherry on top. And again, if you have any questions about any of these cuts, first of all, practice them before you ask me. But then if you still have questions, DM me on Instagram or comment below. DMing me is probably the best way to get in touch with me, because I answer every DM, or every DM that involves a question. So thank you for watching this tutorial, and I'll see you next time I make one.